What went wrong, first of all, the Soviet Union broke up, and that led to the reformist center being swept away. That was the heaviest blow. And thereby, ambitious elites came to power in Russia, people who were not concerned as much with reforms or with the fate of the state as with getting power. That this is what would happen was shown by our experiences for the past 250 years. But the real point is that what was done within the framework of economic shock therapy in 1992 is, in general, not how Democrats ought to carry out reforms. The point is that it was imposed by the Yeltsin government. It was a second attempt to impose change. First, the Bolsheviks brought in communism. Now, the neo-Bolsheviks, in the guise of Russia's current rulers, brought in this shock therapy. It has been rejected.
That was the Western advice to Russia.
Well, let the West now draw its own conclusions. When I speak of interdependence, of the wholeness of the world, I always have in mind that at the same time we are all different, and this diversity will be preserved. We must reject what the communists did to bring about the communist way of life, and Americans should not try to impose their own standards on others.
I understand what you want for your country. Has there been progress since you left the presidency? Has there been progress since you left power under President Yeltsin toward this goal, toward this ideal? Is Russia moving forward, or has Russia gone backward? You mentioned, for example, what you created the first real parliament in Russia in 70 years. And one day you turned on your television set and you saw tanks shooting at the parliament. What did you think? How did the father of Russian parliamentary democracy, what did you think when you saw the tanks in the street?
I don't agree with the decisions made by President Yeltsin. I was decisively against breaking up the country, the Soviet Union. I was a strong supporter of the Union's reformation, but at the same time I supported its preservation. I supported giving maximum powers to the Soviet republics and the regions in order to give them the possibility to act responsibly, so that they would use their sovereignty to the fullest. The breakup of the country was the first of Russian President Yeltsin's ideas that were unacceptable to me, and it took a year to show that I was right. And now it is even clearer. Today, there are reintegration processes going on. Meanwhile, people are falling into poverty, and Russia itself is experiencing great difficulties because of the Union's breakup. I have an entirely different concept of what should be done with regard to economic reforms. I, the allegedly indecisive, sluggish Gorbachev, was convinced that reforms could only be carried out gradually, otherwise they would be discredited, and too great a turn could mean a blow against us. To do it quickly was wrong. The pace of these economic transformations were unacceptable to the country.
But there is democracy.
In terms of democracy, I should say that there has been backward movement. Parliament has been turned into a rubber stamp, pocket parliament. Glasnost has been smothered. The courts are silent. There is a crime wave. I, the father of democracy, as you said, have not had the opportunity to appear on live television before the citizens of Russia for the past 2.5 years.
Why? Why not?
You need to put this question to someone else. Many newspapers follow the state line. They write what they are told. On television, we don't see any real information about what is happening in the country. So that is what our democracy has come to. And the climax of all this was the shooting of the first Russian parliament in October 1993. It was an insult to the people. It is still not known how many people died there. Everything is being done to rehabilitate the participants in the 1991 coup against me and in the October 1993 events as fast as possible. They just want to close the book. I think these politicians have lost their right to run the country and they should resign. Since they have not done so, I think they are people who have nothing in their souls, no conscience. But I do not want to speak further about this in front of Americans, because I should say this here in Russia.
Mikhail Sergeyevich, you were the first Russian leader ever to cross the Rubicon to democracy. That was a historic step. But why then did you not stand in a popular election for president in 1989? Why did you have the new parliament elect you president instead? Didn't that harm your authority in the country then and later?
At that time, I did not see a direct election as a major issue. The country had so many other urgent problems.
Many people here say Gorbachev's policies destroyed the Soviet Union. You say it was Yeltsin's policies that destroyed the Soviet Union. It's difficult. Americans won't understand this quite.
Давайте тогда просто факты.
You could have saved the Union. You could have saved the Union.
И сталкивались одновременно с напором и нажимом.
The breakup of the Union certainly was not inevitable. It was the result of a certain mixture of forces. There were radical elements who condemned the empire and called for its destruction in this complex struggle which went on for all of 1991, particularly towards the summer of 1991. We were preparing the Union Treaty and had set August the 20th, 1991 as the date for its signing. So despite all the opposition, we did produce a new Union Treaty.
Несмотря на все противоречия, мы вышли на союзный договор.
Including Russia's President Yeltsin?
И Ельцин.
Including Yeltsin.
И Ельцин
Yeltsin had been given the authority from the Russian parliament to sign the treaty, and a Russian delegation had been formed. There was one delegate from each republic that needed to sign, and we were already discussing how the signing process would take place, who would sit where, who would sign first, and so on. So all of that was reaching its logical conclusion, and at that moment, the fundamentalist forces revolted. The fundamentalists understood that after the treaty was signed, there would be new elections and the formation of new bodies. And as a result of these elections, all of them would have to leave the political stage. It was unacceptable to them. And so they said that they wanted to preserve the Union, but in fact, what they did was to make it impossible to sign the Union Treaty. Therefore, the first blow against the Union was struck by the fundamentalists.
The putsch.
No.
With the tanks.
The putsch against you with the tanks in August 1991.
Да.
That's what you have in mind?
Да, путь.
Yes,
путь.
that coup.
Август 91 года.
August
Изоляция
1991.
президента страны.
The isolation of the president of the Soviet Union. When all the attempts to persuade me to come to their side met with defeat, they locked me up and surrounded me with soldiers at sea and on land so that I would stay there in Vorosh. After August, it was very difficult for me to resume the process of preparing the Union Treaty for signing. But nonetheless, we did it. At the 6th emergency session of Congress, 11 republics and the president of the country were instructed to quickly prepare the Union Treaty and sign it, and told to preserve the Union government, economic space, unified foreign policy, and a united armed forces. In other words, all the elements of a new union were there.
What happened? What happened?
Yeltsin and I were preparing a new draft at the request of all of the other republics taking part in the process. We prepared it. And there was a moment when everyone, me, Yeltsin, and the leaders of the republics appeared on television and announced in front of our country and the world that there will be a union. Yeltsin, behind my back, and this is his nature, this is an indication of the kind of man we were working with, made a deal with Ukraine to end the union. He didn't like a central government that got in the way of his own political ambitions. But can you really take his policies seriously when, for the sake of his narrow goals, the policies lead to the destruction of the union? And now they're all trying to whitewash themselves and remove the blame for the destruction by saying that there was no other way out. But that is a lie. The signing of the new treaty to preserve a union of Confederate states was set for the second half of December. And therefore, just like the putschists of August, they were in a hurry. Just as the KGB chief Khrushchev said at one point, we need to prevent the signing of the Union Treaty or else it will be too late, Yeltsin also said, we need to go into collusion and announce the Beloversky Agreement to bring the dissolution of the Union.
Was it a putsch? Was it a coup?
It was a coup. But it was a coup that exploited the circumstances of the country.
You know, many Americans still remember Raisa Maximovna's condition after the putsch. I know that her health was very bad. Is she better?
She is better, but her problem hasn't completely gone away.
It hasn't all gone away.
No.
Even today.
Yes.
Because of the putsch?
Yes, of course. American doctors have come to the conclusion that she suffered a micro-stroke, and they proposed carrying out more intrusive procedures, but she declined. I think that psychologically she is better and stronger now, and once again we travel together, and she is more active. But she still has a blood vessel illness with bleeding in both eyes. Her vision has deteriorated badly.
Terrible.
In general, she suffered a great deal. And so did Irina.
Your daughter.
It was a lot of stress. Seryosha over there, the security officer, was with me at Forosh. He knows.
He was with you there.
Yes, he was the one who came down from the airplane with a machine gun. That's him.
We ought to get a picture of him.
Seryosha, take off your glasses. He's a very nice young guy. Very able.
Loyal?
Very loyal, honest.
I understand.
And he's a very good singer.
Really?
Yes, I found that out just a little while ago.
You changed the world. But do we live in a world that is better today than it was in 1985? This is the question historians will debate in the future. In terms of nuclear weapons, we're less safe. More countries have them. Control, especially in the former Soviet Union, is less good than it was in 1985. In areas where once there was civil peace, today there is civil war. In areas where people live longer, today they live less long. There may be less democracy and more fascism. I worry we may be entering a dark ages. And therefore the question arises, Gorbachev changed the world, but are we better off today than we were when you came to power in 1985?
The implementation of my new thinking in international affairs is something that has had far-reaching consequences. I can't regard the end of the Cold War as a failure, or the fact that we ended the sharp confrontations and division of the whole world based on ideology. We ended the nuclear race, and have begun to turn it around and destroy rockets. We have pushed forward the dismantling of conventional weapons. And above all, when the world was locked in confrontation between the Eastern and Western blocs, we were not able to resolve any international conflict at all. Now things are very different in Afghanistan and elsewhere. Of course, there are still problems. It is not easy to solve everything so quickly. But there is no longer the confrontation between the two blocs, where these countries were treated like guinea pigs. Would the end of apartheid in South Africa have been possible? And what's happening in Namibia, Angola? We think that we started a most important process, and I think that it is related to the settlement in the Middle East. I could list many other examples. Is this really a failure? No, I don't think so.
Nonetheless, we could say the following, that Gorbachev and his foreign partners, Thatcher, Reagan, Bush, Kohl, gave us an opportunity we did not have in 1985, a new opportunity today to make the world truly safe, but everything depends on how the leaders today use this opportunity which you gave them. Would that be a fair summary?
Not entirely, because we were not only visionaries who created an opportunity, we did much ourselves to show how one should act.
Do you feel that you and your children are safer today with all these nuclear devices and so little stability in former Soviet territories?
Нет, я беспокоен так же, как и вы.
No, I don't. I am just as concerned as you are. But the politicians who took on the responsibility and who were capable of ending the Cold War were not just pacifists. They were real politicians who made very difficult decisions and were not afraid of these difficulties. Now, when there is this great opportunity and a situation in which it is possible to act even more dynamically in international affairs, the current policies simply surprise me.
Решение внешних проблем нынешней политики просто меня удивляют.
Already in the Western press, there's the image of a new threatening Russia. Our press is full of, what is Russia in America? Corruption, mafia, crime, crisis. People are beginning to fear Russia again, not because of communism, but because everything seems to be out of control. Then there's the fear of Russian nationalism. After Zhirinovsky's victory, or partial victory, in the elections last year, people in America began to say there's the danger of fascism in Russia. So again, the whole image of Russia and the possibility of a new union, what will be the American reaction?
Итак, Соединенным Штатам Америки.
So the United States would like to see a stable country here, with democratic principles and respect for other countries and its neighbors. If that is so, then I should say that Russia will become stable more quickly and will become a more democratic country with open relations with others more rapidly if the process of integration among the former Soviet republics or the Commonwealth takes place. There are impulses for reintegration coming from various places and various republics. There are impulses coming from the people of the republics rather than from the elites who do it simply to realize their political ambitions. If there is a process of new integration, it won't be the old type of union government. It will be a real union of states, and at first it will be a sphere of economic cooperation. This is the thing that will really bring stabilization and calm people down and open up the possibility of cooperation with other former republics, even if it is not profitable. Moreover, Russians, and I am deeply convinced of this, want economic cooperation. It means a large potential market. And if it is a large market, then it means new jobs. I think, Steve, whoever believes that it is to their advantage to beat into Americans' heads that a backward, stagnating Russia is good for Americans and serves their vital interests is wrong. Neither Russians nor Americans need that.
It's possible to agree with you completely, but still to ask you this question. Think about politics in America. You know America. You know the situation. What do you think will be the reaction in the United States if any kind of new, larger Russia, union, confederation, association begins to emerge?
But why is it that Washington ought to decide what relations there should be between the former republics of the Soviet Union? Why should they decide over there? Why should you, if you respect democratic principles, want to impose some kind of model, especially a model which you think is to your advantage? Why don't you give it a chance? If there are free elections, that is the basis of Gorbachev's new thinking, recognize that every people, big or small, should have free elections. But I'll say once again that the process of stabilization is what we need, even without the cooperation of the former republics. But it is all made out of inseparable parts, all of which are suffering from the split. Even the great Russia, which had counted on controlling its resources of oil, gas, everything at its disposal, in order to quickly become one of the 5 most developed countries. And this is what it has come to. Even Russia can't do without the other republics. It is a dismembered body. The republics must be given the chance to function with all parts. But this would not be in the form of an empire. That can only come about on the basis of voluntary decisions.
I am prepared to believe that you are correct, but tell me in one word what you think will be the reaction in the United States when that process begins and becomes apparent to Americans. What will be the political reaction in the United States? You have to remember how happy the United States was when the Soviet Union disappeared 3 years ago. And if 3 years later or 4 years later, suddenly Americans wake up and it looks like, it sounds like, it might be another Soviet Union or a greater Russia, what will be the American reaction?
Ну, послушайте, сие ведь, так сказать, от американцев не зависит.
Listen, this is something that doesn't depend on Americans. Do they think that they destroyed the Soviet Union themselves, and now this is all in their hands? No, this was a domestic process. I don't want to ascribe it to the Americans.
Правительства еще не отказались от демократических принципов, в том числе и в международных отношениях.
There has been a 2-century dispute in Russia between the people who call themselves Westernizers and the people who call themselves Slavophiles about the future of this great country. The Russian nationalists, the people who call themselves Slavophiles today, who believe, as did their 19th century ancestors, that Russia must stay apart from the West, that Russia must not become a Western country. Russia is not part of Western civilization. Russia has its own destiny. They say that Gorbachev is the great Westernizer. Once again comes a leader who tries to pull poor Russia to the West, where Russia does not belong.
Я думаю, что тогда вы еще не разобрались в Горбачеве.
Well, I think that in that case you don't fully understand Gorbachev.
Help me then. Help me to understand Gorbachev.
Got a full book.
Хорошо, Стив.
Okay, Steve. I simply want to tell you in simple words, and this will be an answer in itself. What do you say about the fact that it was Gorbachev who revived relations with China, who created a framework for new relations with Japan? What do you say to the colossal rapprochement I carried out between India and the Soviet Union? All that happened when I was in office. So to accuse Gorbachev of being an inveterate pro-Westernizer is not a serious criticism. I'm a Russian person, and I have it within me, as all of us do.
President Bill Clinton, a young president, still a relatively new president, has been strongly criticized in the United States for not having wise foreign policies. And as a rule, President Clinton answers, but my policy toward Russia and toward President Yeltsin is a great success. Has it been a great success?
If Mr. Clinton believes that the policies that have brought Russia to the condition that it is in today are a great accomplishment, and that the political course that Yeltsin is carrying out is something to be approved of, then I should be careful about what I say about his relation to Yeltsin.
Too much support for President Yeltsin personally.
Ну, я Я думаю, что позиция...
I think that the position of the Clinton administration has already gone through some changes and has become more realistic. But I would not support an approach whereby the United States of America would want to put Russia in its place. I think that would boomerang. In Russian society, this would throw into doubt everything that has happened up to this point to normalize relations between the Soviet Union and between Russia and the United States. People would say that America is a selfish country. Its own interests come first, but forgets that others have interests as well. That would be the response if your government tried to cut Russia down to size.
And if President Yeltsin, who has the full confidence of the American administration, decides that he will postpone elections, again, will the American government support that decision?
Я все-таки думаю, что...
I think that the American government will find itself in a difficult situation if it does that. Then we would have to pose a great question to ourselves. All thinking people, all those concerned with democracy in Russia, would have to pose the question, who are we dealing with in America?
Many Russian ultranationalists, even fascists, are saying that they are the real patriots. Are you a patriot?
Да, конечно.
Yes, of course, without a doubt. Just like you are a patriot of your own country. But those nationalists are not the kind of patriots we are talking about. A patriot is someone who really cares about his country and thinks about how the country can succeed and build itself up, and who also wants it to work in open cooperation with other nations. This, by the way, is in Russian traditions. Dostoevsky, for whom I have great respect because he was very knowledgeable about human nature, I cannot quote exactly, but he said that the Russian heart is more open to relations with other people than are the hearts of other nations. I agree. So, in this context, I would support the Slavophiles in the idea that Russian problems of the present and future can't be solved if you forget about Russian history, the Russian mentality, and the culture of the people. All the attempts to impose a foreign model, the Bolshevik model and now International Monetary Fund model, as I said before, will fail at the cultural level. Both have been rejected. But if Slavophiles or nationalists want to all but shut us off behind some kind of iron curtain or have some kind of lid on relations with other nations, that is not how Russia was formed. It developed by seeking contact with others. Why are there Russian churches around San Francisco? Because Russians went there. Russians were there, and traces of their activities remain. So my view is this. Just as I can't accept any absolutely pro-Western philosophy, I believe that is humiliating to one's own nation. One cannot reject the significance of Western experience, relations, and cultural cooperation. There are no conflicts here that can't be overcome. On the contrary, especially now when the world is getting smaller and more integrated and interdependent, when we have become closer to each other, I think there is an opportunity to combine traditions while remaining our own selves, just as you in America remain your own selves. It is desirable to enter into cooperation and contact and make use of this. This is the meaning of Gorbachev.
That's Gorbachev.
Это Горбачев.
Just briefly, Americans are afraid of Russian nationalism because Americans saw Zhirinovsky. Should Americans fear Russian nationalism? Or is the kind of patriotism that you describe the real Russian national feeling? I know it's a large question, but reassure me or depress me.
Russia's future will not be Zhirinovsky or political movements like Zhirinovsky's. They are merely a reflection of a specific stage in Russia's current development. Zhirinovsky's success was a reaction to the political course that was pursued as an alternative to Gorbachev's perestroika and which has included the destruction of the Union and economic shock therapy. The people paid a great social price for these policies, which humiliate.